Hi, and welcome everybody to Is Scalability Enough? A deeper look at inclusivity in online programs. Since we only have 20 minutes, we are going to just dive right in. My name is Abby Rose, and I am the course coordinator for the MSDS on Coursera.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaitlyn Rye, and I am the graduate program advisor for the MSDS program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Bond, and I am the program and marketing coordinator for the MSDS program on Coursera. And I'm going to take us right into the agenda. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to start by asking what inclusivity means to you, give a quick overview of the MS in Data Science on Coursera program, highlight some examples of the interplay between inclusivity and scalability in the MSDS, apply some lessons learned, and hopefully still have time for some questions at the end. So let's jump right in. Let's get started. What words come to mind when you think of inclusivity in online education? If you're going to throw some answers in the chat box. I'll just give a couple minutes for people to respond. Welcoming, that's a good one. Acceptance. Maybe see if we can get one or two more. Yeah, everyone can access without barriers. That's great. UDL, I think that's universal design for learning, accessible, everyone accessing. Great. So some common themes there. Thank you so much for sharing, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of build on those ideas as we go through the presentation. Now, Kaitlyn's going to give us a quick overview of the MSDS program.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So the MSDS program on Coursera is a self-paced, fully online degree program open to learners all over the world. Learners can complete their entire degree via an asynchronous online learning platform that is Coursera. So a new session starts every 8 weeks, and students can join at almost any time within that 8-week window, even while a session is going on. As students progress through the course, each course does end with a final exam, which can be proctored via ProctorU, an online proctoring service, or through an asynchronous peer-graded assessment. Students have access to email support, online career services, virtual office hours with course facilitators, and a student Slack workspace. There are, of course, other unique program features that we won't quite get into today due to the time limits, but we will certainly share a link to our website at the end of the presentation if you're curious to learn more. So in terms of what we're going to talk about first is the student support. So because I am the graduate program advisor, I certainly want to talk about the advising piece and the student support that students get from a student staff perspective. So my role as an advisor allows me to provide support to 4 credit students in this degree. So anyone who's currently enrolled in a CU Boulder course on Coursera. So of course, as maybe some people might know, in a traditional job as an advisor, it's my role to support students through academic challenges, course planning, connecting students to different resources on campus, etc. However, this degree program, because it is so scalable, we've really built in ways where students can go through this process very independently. So students can complete an enrollment form that has course tracking options on it, and students are independent throughout this entire process. This was a design approach that allowed for scalability in regards to students to be able to move along at their own pace and be able to move along in a course sequence independently. So it doesn't require that one-on-one interaction that you would traditionally see through a residential program or a not so self-paced degree program. The website and different other strategies that we've used allow students to go through the program working on this course registration and tracking towards degree progress without having to meet with me before course scheduling. However, because we do want to be inclusive to learners who want that one-on-one interaction and who need a little bit more guidance throughout the process, we do allow one-on-one advising appointments. So right now I do have an advising calendar set up where students can schedule a 15-minute advising appointment. And so far, students have asked, of course, about what classes to take next, different enrollment questions about when enrollment opens and closes and what they should be doing at certain points. And then also just other kind of university questions, which of course is to be expected as an advisor. So one other thing that we are trying to work on as well in inclusivity is making sure that students are, not only being able to access the staff at an appropriate time, but also making sure that students are getting certain interventions. And so that's something that we are still working on. Because the classes are so self-paced, someone can start a class 2 weeks before it ends. So it's really interesting to try to think of that in a scalable approach. In what point do we intervene? At what point is someone considered at risk? If someone, can enroll at any point within 8 weeks, the deadlines in Coursera, act as recommended deadlines for students to follow. So at what point, can we intervene to be inclusive to all learners? So this is just kind of one way that we're, talking about that intersection of scalability and inclusivity in overall student support. So of course, I went through that really quick. If you do have questions at the end, feel free to ask in the Q&A section if you have questions more about our advising approach to the program. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. Now I'm going to talk about the intersections between the extracurricular student experience, scalability, and inclusivity on the program, specifically in how students interact with each other and build community and professional development opportunities and career services. One of the areas that I think has been really successful in this program is peer-to-peer interaction and community building. When we started, we created an MSDS Slack workspace, and we invited students to it as part of the onboarding process. We saw this mainly as a way to make things more scalable. So students can ask their peers for help in real time. More experienced students could help the newer students figure out how the program worked and so on. And it certainly has been scalable, but we've also seen some really great authentic interactions in this space. The program's flexible format means we've seen a lot of diversity in our students as far as where they're coming from in the world, what their academic and professional backgrounds look like, why they're in the program. Full disclosure, I come from the study abroad world. So one thing I think is really important in learning how to be inclusive and being an inclusive person is to have real authentic interactions with people who are different from yourself and learn from them. So this kind of interaction, I personally think is extremely valuable. And our students have made it happen on Slack. They've helped each other understand concepts through class for sure, but they've also hosted happy hours, shared memes. This one here is a real example from one of our students on that Slack channel. One student even held a math review for folks who needed it before starting a particular class. So it's been really interactive. That said, the flexible format of the program also means that some groups might feel more marginalized in this space. The program's in English, so some students might have a harder time communicating comfortably. Those students with internet access issues or in a different time zone or learning differences might have a harder time joining these kind of ad hoc virtual events that students are hosting and feeling included in them. So it's a real win for scalability, and it gives opportunities for authentic interactions, but there are still some inclusivity issues here. I'm hoping we can close that gap a bit in the future and totally welcome your ideas when we get to the end of this session. The other piece I want to quickly mention is career services and professional development. This is one area where I don't think we're doing quite as strongly regarding inclusivity just yet. So again, this is reaching a wider audience. So we have a lot more diversity in the program, but it does make inclusivity a bit more challenging. So for example, with career services, we're a US-based institution. We can't be experts in every region of the world. So while all of our students do have access to online CU career services, some domestic students probably can get more, find more opportunities. Career tips like how to write a strong resume, those are going to be more focused towards business culture in the US. So that's one example. Another example would be letters of recommendation. Students don't work incredibly closely with faculty on this program. Some of them do work closely with course facilitators, and some are just completely independent and don't really ever talk to anyone. So what happens when students ask for a reference? Can we ask our course facilitators to do that? Do they have the relationship to write a good reference? And is it a scalable solution? And what about countries and cultures where employers want to talk to someone on the phone about the student as part of that reference process? So a lot to kind of unpack there. We are trying to find some ways to be more inclusive in this space. CU has regional alumni groups across the globe, so we've tried to highlight those for students. We're also looking into creating a more structured data science student organization for this group of students, and ways to give students more professional development opportunities, even though they're virtual. So for example, inviting them to be part of a student panel for a virtual event. I think this is an area where we'll find some really unique solutions as we develop and refine the program. And I also hope we're going to be able to learn from our peers as more of these flexible online programs are developed and, launched in the wake of COVID. So I'm going to throw it over to Abby.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. So I'm kind of taking the part of exceptions. So there will always be exceptions that will need to be made in a scalable online graduate program. So how do we honor equity, inclusivity, and fairness when making these exceptions? From our experience, each answer is situational, and we know as our program grows, we'll have, this will be a challenge that we'll continue to face. So to head off a heavy workload on our team, we're constantly reevaluating our approach to academic support. Do we have an answer to that yet? Not quite. Do we constantly try to reshape and streamline our policies and practices? Absolutely. So the following anecdotal example highlights when we have to honor inclusivity over scalability in the MSDS program, and that's academic dishonesty. So it isn't a rarity in higher education, but in our program, we encounter cases each 8-week session. Our honor code is made clear to students in the handbook, our onboarding course, and its course syllabi. But academic integrity is different between disciplines, we've learned. What is plagiarism in a history course is not so in a data science course. What is academic dishonesty in a peer graded assignment could be the case where a student failed to cite their sources properly. What is plagiarism or academic dishonesty in the United States may not be true in other countries where our students reside. So before sending one of our students to the honor code office where they could potentially be removed from the university for an indiscretion, it is critical to consider the individual's background and story. For examples, are they a recent undergraduate from liberal arts jumping to a STEM program? Are they a professional of 25 years returning to school who may not remember the specifics of academic dishonesty and plagiarism? Are they from a different country with different perspectives on academic dishonesty than here in the United States? A broad and rigid policy on academic dishonesty really can hurt the wide variety of students in our scalable program. Each case of possible violation needs to be carefully considered because we need to uphold our commitment to inclusivity. So in the few cases that we have reviewed of academic dishonesty, many of them were instances of naivete or unawareness. So to help our students succeed, the course facilitator, the faculty member, and course coordinator carefully evaluate each student's case, taking all factors into consideration. And then we present the student with a positive option or resolution. Each of the cases were resolved without honor code intervention, I'm glad to say. And however, if we had maintained our sweeping scalable policy and overlooked the students' unique stories for the sake of scalability, each one of them could have faced a final grade of F and or have been removed from the program or university. When it's our mission to help our students become successful, prepared graduates of our program, grasping onto a scalable honor code policy can disrail us from that mission. So we're going to move on to talk, we're going to have a conversation now about applying lessons learned. So we ask for you to think about the intersection of scalability and inclusivity in your own work. Which way do you lean in addressing issues? Do you lean more towards being inclusive or more towards scalable? And how can you be more inclusive in your work? So we ask either that you put your answers in the chat or raise your hand and we'll gladly call on you.
kind of a tough question. How are you going to implement this tomorrow? Maybe it would be helpful if we let people kind of mull this over and add answers to the chat like at their own pace. And in the meantime, we can kind of, if there's any questions, we can go to the Q&A. So if you have questions for us, we're more than happy to answer them. This is a pretty quick presentation, so you might still have some questions.
We do offer office hours. They're typically, we offer a minimum of 2 hours a week, and we ask that our course facilitators offer them at various times so that we try to hit all of the time zones that our students are in. And it's that one is difficult because like we tend to have like the same group of students, small group of students attend each office hours. So we're trying to find ways to really bring students into that. One of the things that one of my course facilitators mentioned is that in his country, in India, he office hours isn't a thing. And so students don't utilize that part of our program, which is a really important part of our program. So how do we reach out to those students? We're still working on that. And I think, you know, just understanding that maybe there are other ways to connect with them. Maybe we connect with them through email or discussion forums or other formats to support them as they need.
And to add to what Abby is saying, since we're talking about inclusivity, there's certainly cultures, East Asia comes to mind, where even questioning, you know, how something works could be seen as questioning the authority of the professor or the course facilitator. So again, trying to keep those cultural differences in mind when we're coming up with these solutions. It's not easy and we don't always get it right, especially the first time, but you know, yeah.
So online proctoring, yeah. We have a lot of, this was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about, but I didn't have time. But one of the concerns about online proctoring is privacy, because the proctors dial into the person's computer and have access to everything. So that is a concern. And a lot of our students have talked about, well, you know, you can just buy a separate computer, cheapo computer, and do your exam on that computer, or maybe you have an old one. And the concern is, well, okay, students who can't afford that will then have to open up their computer to an online proctor. And, you know, is that fair? And that's a big challenge. I know, Jennifer, you brought that up. It's one of the conversations you saw and read about that students were having. So I don't know if you want to add to that, but that is, you know, one part. And also with the proctoring is, you know, we say the, you know, if their internet connectivity is weak or fails, it's on them. But, you know, there are a lot of ways we can't always hold them to that. I mean, if there's a power outage because, for example, an Israeli student asked us, you know, during the time when there were a bunch of bombings, hey, if the power goes out because of a bombing or I have to run and hide, will you penalize me for that? And it's like, of course we wouldn't. But, you know, those are, you all, again, it goes back to academic dishonesty, like you said in your comment, that it's an individual, it's case by case basis.
I think as we talked about this presentation and, you know, examples of where inclusivity and scalability overlap and clash, that was the kind of biggest takeaway for me. Was I'm a systems person. I like things to, you know, be following the rules, but I think in order to be inclusive, we have to, as long as the program exists, approach each of these situations with that mindset of, you know, where are these students coming from? And is it really fair and equitable if we're applying this one size fits all policy to people coming from all these different backgrounds? I don't see another question, but it looks like it's 12:50 exactly. So
Well, thank you all so much for attending and sharing your thoughts. And we hope that's kind of given you some ideas of, you know, how do we be inclusive with these large programs? I'll hand it over to Kaitlyn and Jennifer to say farewell.
Great, thank you, Abby. And I did see another comment in here. So it sounds like you're really getting stuff out of this presentation, which is great. If you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. There is our program website at the top too. So if you want to learn more about the program, feel free. And thank you so much for spending some time here this afternoon with us.
yeah, I'll just echo that. Thank you so much. It was a really fun presentation to put on, and great things to be thinking about. So we really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.